We're going to introduce ourselves, and then there's various points about the Alexanders that we want to talk about, and we're going to try and keep it.
Yeah.
I'm going to sit on Gordon so it's toughened up. But anyway, Gordon.
Okay, right. My name is Gordon Smyth. I'm from Strabane, Christchurch in Strabane, in the parish of Camus Juxtamorn, which basically means the bend of the river. And it was while I was researching, and my son Trevor was researching for our book, which we wrote, an illustrated history of Christchurch and Strabane, that I came made aware of Cecil Frances Alexander. And I was really intrigued, and I thought, this is fantastic. I'm going to look into this, and I did look into it a little bit more. And I found that it was really fascinating, not only the connection she had with Christchurch, but with Strabane in general. And from there on, I thought, well, I'm going to look into this, and I did do that for a few years. So, yeah.
Eva.
Well, my name is Eva Baxter. I come from Pedigo, and I got involved with Cecil Frances Alexander when I had been mentored for storytelling with Liz Weir, and she asked me what kind of stories was I going to tell when I was finished, and I said I would like to tell stories of women of faith, and I loved Mrs. Alexander's hymns, and I decided that's who I was going to research. And I went to St. Columb's Cathedral in Londonderry, where I met with a gentleman called Mr. Ian Bartlett. He was more than helpful. He gave me a list of names of books that I could get, and I decided also that I would like to know something about her husband, the William Alexander, and I got a book from the library in Belfast for that, and so I spent the winter getting Mrs. Alexander researched, and I was greatly helped by two gentlemen who are here in this group, and that is Canon Peter and Gordon, because they sort of kept me going about Cecil Frances, and it has been a lovely journey.
My name is Elizabeth Fielding, and I'm a Derry girl, and I married a member of St. Colum's Cathedral parish, and discovered Mrs. Alexander, and I felt that she was ours, you know, that nobody else cared for her, and we looked after her grave, and it was refurbished this year again, and every Good Friday a group take an arrangement of flowers and go up to her grave and sing "There is a Green Hill Far Away." And I just felt always very close to her. And then later on there was a book written by Canon Lovell, who served in Strabane, and I was involved in that, and the whole thing about her dogs and all is amazing, and you have a story about dogs too, Eva. So that's really how I became involved with Mrs. Alexander.
Yeah.
So do you want to say what your favourite connection is with Mrs. Alexander, Gordon?
Yes, well, I have a lot of little favourite bits and pieces, but one of the stories is when they came to Strabane in 1833, these ladies here, she had a sister then called Annie, and now she was more than a sister. Annie, they were actually best friends. But these ladies were appalled, as were the Humphrey families, of the poverty that they saw in the town of Strabane. The children were walking in the muddy streets, they were unwashed, hair not combed, they were in an awful state. And the ladies thought, you know, we'll try and help them out here. So they could be seen regularly walking down through Strabane with their wicker baskets filled with food from the kitchens at Milltown House and from the garden at Milltown House with vegetables. And it was while they were visiting one of the poor houses in Strabane, that they saw this little boy here sitting in the corner. And Annie went over to talk to the little boy, and the mother says, "Oh, you needn't bother, because he can't hear you, nor he can't speak." That little boy was deaf and dumb. Now, Annie was really taken back by this. And on the way back to Milltown House, the two ladies discussed this here. What hope had that little boy in the town of Strabane in the 1830s? And of course the answer was bleak indeed. So they decided, we'll have to do something about the situation here. So their father had a big shed at the back of Milltown House, and the girls asked, could they use it? And of course their father said yes. So they actually started a little schoolroom, a little schoolroom. And they invited that little boy, and there was 3 or 4 others, up to Milltown House. And these two ladies was showing them how to do lip reading and how to communicate really with the general public. Now the little boys loved it at Milltown House because they were getting well fed, and in fact they were getting well looked after. They were delighted at that up there. Now when they actually ended up with 11 children at the little school. Now the authorities saw the good work that these 2 young ladies were doing. So they decided, we'll build a purpose-built school for the deaf and dumb, and they built it beside the courthouse now in Strabane. And the 2 ladies were invited to the Foundation Stone Lane in 1850, and the 2 ladies were delighted by that. So that's my favourite part of it.
That's your favourite part, okay. And then, of course, during the time that she was living here in this house.
Yes, well, I'm sure you all know the story of the fire that took place in the deaf and dumb school in Strabane. The Humphreys, or the Alexanders were living here at the time. It was 1856, and they woke up one morning to the devastating news that a fire had broke out, and there were 6 little children had lost their lives. Simply because when the authorities attended the fire, they broke a window and they called them, "Is there anybody in here?" And of course the children, being deaf and dumb, they couldn't hear, and they couldn't speak, couldn't shout out, "We're here." So they hid under their beds, and those 6 little children perished in the fire.
And you went Friday a week ago, was it, on the Lantern Walk?
Yes, we done a lantern walk, and one of the places we stopped was at that little graveyard in Patrick Street in Strabane there, just at the gate as you go in. It was very poignant indeed, I have to say. And this is a little poem here that I recited here at that little meeting here. It was wrote just shortly after the burial of those 6 little children there. So it's called The Voice of a Mother. "Lady, lady," the mother said, "though kneeling on the sod, I came, I looked upon my dead, and yet I thanked my God." And still she wept, and still she knelt. "The Lord God bless," said she, "the hands that worked, the hearts that felt, for my poor child and me. How many a time I've wept and prayed that Christ would wet the clay and give my speechless creature aid that in my bosom laid."
That's lovely. Eva.
Well, Gordon has just told us there about the home for the deaf and dumb, and that was she built the home from the money that she raised with the writing of her hymns for little children, which she did in Milltown House, Strabane. And I kind of want to go back, if it's okay with you all, she was born in 1818 in number 25 Eccles Street, Dublin. The date of her birth is not known, but we know that she was baptised in the Dignified Church of St. George. Eccles Street in Dublin is not what it was in those days. A lot of people would ask about her name. She is called Cecil after Lady Harriet Hard's mother, the 3rd Earl of Wicklow. It was a great friend, and she is her godmother. So that's where the Cecil comes in and continues to appear in Alexander's names. And then when she was about 11, she wrote hymns for Mama, or poems for Mama. And then she continued, then they moved from Dublin to Wicklow, and from Wicklow, reluctantly, the Howards parted with her father, Major John Humphreys, who had been invalided out of the war, and that's why he was in Dublin and how he met his wife, Elizabeth Frances Reid. But then they moved as a family when they were 7, I think, they moved from Dublin when they were 7 to Wicklow, and then when she was 15, they moved to Milltown House, Strabane, where she wrote her hymns for little children. But after the fire, herself and her husband, he was a poet in his own right, and they wrote The Legend of Golden Prayer, I think it was called, together. They wrote a hymn, again, to raise money, I would imagine. And that was something that a woman of her class would not normally have been able to earn money. But she also wrote in French for a Dublin magazine in a pen name. So she really was a very go-ahead, strong woman. And I love this, and I think the ladies will like this. She said that it was housework was not important to her. She much preferred to be, I would say, out helping people or caring for people or making a pot of jam, but she never sat down with idle hands, always had knitting or something on the needles.
Yeah, there's a large portrait of her in the chapter house of the cathedral, and she's seen there. Is she embroidering, Diana? You know, so even while she was having her portrait painted, you know, she was busy. But there's also all the work that she did with the district nursing services.
She was known in the Cathedral area as Florence Nightingale. And the doctors, there was no NHS, the doctors were very grateful for her work. And there were 3, she looked after a lady called Ellen Hoynes in the Cathedral area, a Roman Catholic lady, and she dressed her a festering wound, which they believe was cancer. And she did that for 6 weeks. She also took off her outer garment, which was her shawl, and wrapped it around a lady who had hypothermia. And she gave money to get a young man whose health was cut short, cut his education short, and he became a national teacher. And she, I think she was involved in the Girls Friendly in Ireland, one of the first people.
Yes, and she worked, she was well ahead of her time in the organisations and all that she set up, that she's seen was required, like the district nursing service in Derry. And she was very fond of a man called Tinney in Bishop Street that she would attend to. And she was involved in the Women's Penitentiary, which is down, if some of you know, where Jack Allen Court is. And people in that area complain about spirits, you know, that there was so much unhappiness down around that place, and she was in there trying to...
Yeah, and it was quite a trio, as it were, herself and her 2 daughters with their baskets and their 3 Irish wolfhounds as they went to the poor of the city and from one sick bed to another. And she 7 dogs. She had, she was in France, the side of the River Seine, and she was at a bookstall, and she saw a naughty boy, throwing stones, and she managed to get the terrier, Jack Russell, and she got it to her hotel. She got an injection, even in those days, and got it back to Derry, where it joined her 7 other dogs, a number of mongrels,
And she'd one
poodle,
called,
and a sheepdog that bit people.
yeah, and Sophia, who she carried in her muff.
Really,
Yes.
in her muff.
Aye. And Lola was one of her dogs. I
Well,
think it was a poodle.
Well, she called the dog that she brought from France Loup. I don't know why. I'd love to know. Does anybody here know the French for Loup?
Yes.
Or
Yeah.
for which?
The French word for a wolf.
For a.
For a wolf.
Oh, there you
Oh,
are.
thank you.
Write that down.
Thank you. I'll remember that. That's brilliant to know. That's what she called it.
But the whole connection here as well, you have the connection she had with Agnes Jones, who lived in Fahan. But the other exceptional thing is Eileen Donaghy, whose parents were from Derry and Moville. She was the first registered nurse in the world in 1901. And I just think, isn't that amazing? You know, as somebody from here. And then you have Agnes Jones, who was a nurse who also trained with Florence Nightingale. And some of you might know the Agnes Jones home up at Donegal Hospital, where the Eatons used to live before it became a hospital. And there's a memorial window to her in the Liverpool Anglican Cathedral at the Lady Chapel. And like, hasn't Fahan done well? I just think, you know, it's just amazing what is going on.
I must just say that when we're in this building, it really, they came from Killeator to here, and it was, I think, a 52-acre farm. It was at Old Rectory, and in the book it said that she would say to her husband in the evening, "Did you see that cow today, or did you milk it?" And then she would have said, "Have you that poem finished?" And if he had said yes, she would have said, "Well, let's go to the study where I will criticise it ferociously." So it's just like every mother, man and wife.
We did want to say about favourite hymns, and mine is not a hymn. My favourite would be a short poem, and I worked for most of my life with young children, and this one's about a 3-year-old, and it's called "In the Distance." In the distance, oh my lady, little lady turned of 3, will the woodland seem as shady? Will the sunshine seem as free? Will the primrose buds come peeping, quite as bright beneath the tree, and the brook sing in its sleeping, as they do for you and me? Oh my darling, oh my daisy, in the days that are to be, in the distance dim and hazy, with its lights far out at sea, when you're tall and fair and stately, will you ever care for me? Will you prize my coming greatly, as you did when you were 3?
Lovely. Yeah.
It's a lovely poem.
Mm-hmm.
And what else have we not talked about either?
We haven't touched on their
Hymns.
how they met, actually. But can I come in with a little story here?
Yes, of
for
course.
You? Well, they met. It was when the Reverend Goff, Ben Goff is right, came to the neighbouring parish of Erney, that they decided that they would throw a little party, a little get to know you party, really it was. And one of the guests invited to that party was a young William Alexander. He was introduced to Cecil Frances at the party, and they hit it off from the word go. In fact, historians say that it was love at first sight. For it was just a few months after their initial meeting that William walked Cecil Frances to the furthest part of the garden at the back of Milltown House. And there it said, like a true gentleman, he got down on one knee and he proposed to Cecil Frances. And it was there in the garden at the back of Milltown House that Cecil Frances accepted his proposal of marriage. Now the Humphreys were delighted. They thought, this is just what she needs here. And they were delighted she picked William for her husband. But the Alexanders were not so enthusiastic. They actually thought he was marrying beneath himself. Not only that, but Cecil Frances was 6 years older than William. But when they learnt of the connection that the Humphreys had with the Duke and Duchess of Abercorn, well, things began to change a little. And they came to accept the marriage. And on the 15th of October, 1850, Cecil Frances Humphreys walked through the doors of Milltown House to her wedding in Patrick Street. The next time she would walk through the doors of Milltown House, she was Mrs. Cecil Frances Alexander, and from then on she would sign herself CFA. Just a little story for you.
And that is time up. That was my little alarm there because I knew I was
Sorry, but over. Yeah.
No, so thank you so much. So Group 5 are now making a swift exit up to the mini museum with Bridgie Rutherford, and he's upstairs. So we're just going to go upstairs to see some artifacts belonging.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.